Welcome into Kickin It. I'm not Jeff Woody. I'm Grant Mahoney
Neither am
here
I.
with Aiden Wyatt. Jeff decided to be a dad. Congratulations to Jeff and his wife. They had their beautiful daughter, Nell, born yesterday. If you're listening to, I guess yesterday. That's subjective. Born on Sunday,
Correct.
November 19th. Kickin It is brought to you by Kelder Manufacturing, and we are recorded in the Wild Rose Casino remote studio this time. Since my producer decided to be on Thanksgiving break and went home, we are recording remotely.
Sorry, man.
That's all right. Aiden, how you doing, man?
Doing all right. Texas is a good team.
They are, man. They are good, and I think Hufford's going to go out in his career with a 3-2 record versus Texas, but I don't think that's a bear you want to poke, and he poked the bear.
Yeah, Bears pissed.
Bear's pissed. Not the bear, not Chris Felica, not that type of bear.
Shout out our guy. Yeah.
Yeah, but T'Vondre Sweat, he's a big dude. He had a big impact on the game. I think his impact on the game was probably unlike anything I've seen since Ndamukong Suh, who conveniently blocked one of my PATs as well. One thing on T'Vondre Sweat, he came into Texas at 6'4", 249 pounds. He has put on 113 pounds and now weighs 362 pounds. And I heard on the broadcast that when the announcer asked him about that, he laughed at it and said he was probably closer to 380. Putting on 100 plus pounds in college is insane. And
he basically put on like half or 3/4 of a Grant Mahoney.
Yeah, I mean, almost an entire Grant Mahoney, for being honest here. if he is up to 380. But no, let's just dive into it. He had a huge impact on the game. That blocked PAT, wasn't Contreras' fault. It wasn't Hold or the snapper. It was no one's fault. He's a big dude, bullied his way through. I think you probably have 3 guys just standing there, and they're not gonna, stop a bull rush like that. So It sucks that was an absolute momentum killer. Obviously we had just scored a touchdown and, going to put up 7 points, played Juicy Wiggle afterwards, which I heard that the state in PA still did after they blocked.
So the rule is they do it first touchdown in the second half, regardless of what happens. Because I don't even think that's the first time that's happened where there's a weird moment to play a Juicy Wiggle and they just play it regardless, but it is what it is.
I think there was one, I don't know if it was this year or not, that it was this year where Contreras, it was a bad snap or something, and it was a botched.
That's what it was. Yeah.
PAT, yeah. And they played it like, okay, guys, come on, read a room. But it just sucks. It sucks that was, a momentum killer. Iowa State was making their way back into the game. Texas had, 2 touchdowns pulled off the board, so they came back for a total of 6 points. But it could have been 14 points.
Mm-hmm.
So it sucks that, a momentum killer, when it happened. So, but yeah, give credit where credit's due. Texas held Iowa State to 9 rushing yards, which is unheard of. I know that, Iowa State's got a young running back room. The offensive line has made tremendous strides, but, Rocco Beck had said earlier in the week that this Texas D-line is the best D-line that Iowa State was going to face all year, and he wasn't lying. Those guys were good.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the story of the game, too, was just Texas in the trenches was unlike anything Iowa State had seen this year, and I don't think they'll see anything like it for a long time.
No, I don't think so either. And, we saw – if you can't run the ball, you got to pass the ball. We saw a lot of slants, and I don't know. I feel like it was kind of a vanilla game, kind of a vanilla game plan where we knew it was coming. You run a slant. I would have liked to see maybe a few more shots downfield. Texas's D-backs, I had heard, are their weakness, and if there's, I guess, is a weakness in that defense.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of wish that we would have seen a few more shots. I texted you guys during the game. I love how they are getting Bramer involved. Those tight end screens, we ran 2 of them, and had Brendan Black not been in the way, I think Bramer could have gone for, I don't know if a touchdown, but a lot further than what he had in that one. But it's just good to see. It's good to see that, they're getting creative with the play calls and, getting the ball in the playmakers' hands and letting them make plays.
Yeah, and on Bramer, I was talking to our manager, our site editor, Chris Williams. He says, looking back 5 years from now, Ben Bramer is going to be. He's like the oh my gosh, I can't believe he was on that team type guy. He's an NFL dude. He's a
Yeah.
freak athlete. He's huge. Really bright future for him, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. And he's not the typical. I haven't really noticed him on like on blocking, so I can't tell you how he is. I feel like Gabe Burkle, um, Tyler Moore, they're probably kind of built more like the Sainer, maybe
Mm-hmm.
Charlie Kohler, if you will, and
Yep.
Bramer's built more like an Allen, Chase Allen type thing. And there's also Andrew Keller, who was hurt for most of the year. I think he's got a bright future as well too. We haven't seen any of him, but once Easton Dean, shout out Easton Dean, had a nice long touchdown. I'm glad he got that on senior night. I think
It
once
was
he's
nice
gone,
to see Iowa State use that play against someone
yeah,
else instead of getting beat on it. It seems like that, third and short, fourth and short situation, fake the run up the gut and then just pop it right over the tight end has been a killer for Iowa State this year on
yeah, it
several
has, and that's
occasions.
the safeties, they bite so hard, um, which is good. Iowa State's got a really good run defense, and that comes with having aggressive safeties, but it also
Yep.
comes with being over aggressive, which you've seen throughout the year. We'll continue to see it. I got a feeling that Kansas State, they do a lot of that snap the QB to kind of hold it, wait for a hole to open up, and then go
Mm-hmm.
through it, which you saw with Avery Johnson.
Right.
We talk with Tim Fitzgerald about that on the at our Goldfinch Athletic interview of the week. We talk about that, and teams kind of figure that out with him. But I think Will Howard is still a stud for Kansas State. They're still going to run those plays. And I think we're going to see that though on Saturday, probably. Where Kansas State fakes the QB sneak and then pops over top to someone. Watch out for that. So let's dive into special teams. Special teams played a huge,
Yeah.
they were a huge factor in the game.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously Texas had a punt called back that the guy didn't even need to block him in the back. He was already past him. So thank God that did get called back though, because that would have been 7 more points that
Right.
in momentum.
Xavier Worthy can move, man.
Yeah, he's a stud. He is good. I knew early on in the season that he was returning the balls on punts and had a lot of really nice returns. So glad for that. Aside from that, kind of held him in check. In regards to Contreras' 51-yarder, Perkins did a good job of getting the ball down. It wasn't the best snap. It was a little behind him. Watching the field goal back, Perkins looked like he hit his spot, but I couldn't tell if it was forward or backwards, if it was closer to the snapper or away from the snapper. With Contreras missing a left, I've got to think that Perkins put it down where the spot where it needed to be, but it was forward, so it was close to the long snapper. As you're kicking a field goal, your foot's going to stay locked in at about at that 3 o'clock position, but then naturally your foot's going to wrap around and come through.
Mm-hmm.
And if the ball is placed forward, that's going to cause it to go left. So I'm guessing that's what happened there, which sucks. Contreras is a dog, though. He's got a very short memory and doesn't allow those misses or bad snaps or whatever it might be really affect him. So that's good to see. It's what you want to see in your kicker.
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to see boy Tyler Perkins. Kicked a couple good footballs on Saturday night.
He did. He had some really nice punts. Some of them almost too nice. The one that he returned, that Xavier Worthy returned was almost too nice. But I think too, Jeff had mentioned that Texas, props to them, they were double teaming Darian Porter,
Mm-hmm.
who's a special teams dog. They were double teaming him. He's quick. They knew that double teaming him, that he's not gonna be able to get down there as quickly as he'd like to, and he's the fastest guy that Iowa State's got on that coverage unit.
Yep.
So props to them for doing that too. But Perkins got into it, man. He had a really solid game. I'd heard too before the game that they were using new balls. I'm not sure if they did or not. Which typically a new ball you would see that affect the kicking game, and I feel like it didn't really affect it a whole lot. So yeah, it was good to see. Good to see that our special teams came through. Yeah, I guess a couple more things I want to talk about before we get into the Goldfinch Athletics interview of the week. I've got a Grand Scribe for you if you're here for it. So Grand Scribes. So one comparison I want to make. I've seen a lot of Iowa fans on social media. They're the reason why you don't like Iowa fans. I can't say this is every Iowa fan because I've got some buddies that are Iowa fans, and so they're not this way. But you see a lot of Iowa fans, especially on Twitter, that have made up fake troll accounts. I guess it's even so much a gripe, but just kind of an observation that I feel like Iowa fans are like a jealous ex, um, after a breakup. They create a fake account to keep tabs on their ex. They're always checking on them, acting like they don't care. Then they get defensive when they get called out and saying, "Oh, like, I don't care about you. You care about me." That the only reason why Iowa State fans give them attention is because Iowa fans are, asking about Iowa State, and they're just that super jealous ex that I don't care about you. Go and do your thing. All while either sitting on the couch, eating a tub of ice cream, crying into that ice cream, watching reruns of Friends on repeat. That's what I
Who
gotta say
hurt you,
about
Grant? Who hurt you?
The last thing too I'll say before we dive into our Goldfinch Athletic special teams, our Goldfinch Athletic special teams, our Goldfinch Athletic interview of the week. November is Movember, so you may see a lot of guys, with mustaches, which is basically raising awareness and funds for men's health, specifically for prostate cancer, testicular cancer, mental health, and suicide prevention. Our Kansas State guest this week, Tim Fitzgerald, is battling prostate cancer, so props to him for coming on. Great guy. He's got a great spirit about him. It's bred to, and he's still currently in, cancer treatment. I unfortunately lost my mother to cancer, so I know how impactful cancer is and how impactful, all of the treatments that go into it, that go along with chemo and radiation. I know it just takes a lot out of you, and it's just it's debilitating for those who have to go through it. So one thing I do want to say with Movember and I guess raising awareness for prostate cancer is I would encourage all of our men's listeners who, I'm 34 myself, but I think, I may look into getting this next year, my annual physical, is getting the PSA test performed. It's a blood test that stands for prostate specific antigen. It's basically a protein that's found in your blood that's only made by the prostate gland. Usually during your annual physical, they will take blood and do blood work anyways. And, Tim talks about this, that it's just one more box that the doctor checks, on when you have tests done. So, it may cost some extra dollars to get the PSA test done, but I think you'd be really upset if you don't get the PSA test done and then you later on you have prostate cancer. Whereas, the PSA test, it is able to detect prostate cancer early on. So it's not, perfect, nothing is, but it gives you a better chance of detecting prostate cancer. So, in our interview, Tim does have a little segment where he mentions about it, and he says anybody who's 45 and older get tested. I personally would say anybody who's even 35 and older to get tested. So that's what I got to say about Movember. And yeah, not trying to make it somber, but just try to raise awareness. Now is the time to do it with November and Movember, if you will, being that month. So now, though, we will transition and we will get into our Goldfinch Athletics interview of the week with Tim Fitzgerald of 247 for Kansas State. And now we welcome in Tim Fitzgerald with Wildcats 247. Tim, how are you?
I'm good. It's GoPowercat, but that's good. We are Wildcats 247. You know what? In the new Big 12, that could be Arizona. If you're the Cats, it could be Cincinnati.
It's true.
That's right.
Yeah, very confusing.
So, Tim, I know the schedules for upcoming Big 12 games recently got released.
Oh, you went right there, didn't you?
I did. I'm going down on it. Farmageddon game has been going on for 106 years, and we've played every year. Iowa State and Kansas State have played every year for 106 years. Well, that streak is going to end in 2027.
No.
Iowa State fans are very, very upset about that.
I am.
What are your thoughts on it, and how's the feeling in Manhattan regarding Farmageddon going away in 2027?
Let's get this sucker rolling. I'm pissed. I think it's an absolute travesty. I think the entire scheduling process the Big 12 rolled out. I think what we've seen with the tiebreakers over the last couple of weeks and everything going on with that, you guys may not be as plugged in. I don't know. It's been a big story at K-State because they changed the rules. I don't want to hear from the Big 12. Well, we already done it. We can't change it. I mean, you just literally changed tiebreaker rules in the middle of the season. Why don't you just call this a clarification of your scheduling and schedule Farmageddon every year? Here's the problem. They said they wanted to preserve rivalries. They said they wanted to stay regional. And on top of that, I mean, it's not just this game. this conference finally adds a neighbor for West Virginia. And oh, by the way, you're not going to play them every year. What? Why isn't Cincinnati and West Virginia an annual game? They've got to redo this. And whether you're a fan of pods or not, you know, going 5 in the West kind of screwed up the whole pod idea because you only got 3 in the East. But at least you can pick 3 regular opponents for each school. I mean, 3 is 3 every year and then 6 rotating. That's a pretty good schedule. But no, they go to this bizarre thing where you play some schools 3 times in a 4-year period. That makes no sense. I swear there's not football people, there's not sports people in this office. They're really good at expansion realignment, but they're kind of missing the details on some of this actual game related stuff that's kind of important.
Yeah, and you know, we had Chris Felica on a week or 2 ago, and we had talked to him about that too. And you know, that was kind of something he had said too, is that, you know, he hates it, you know, and he wants to stick to regionality. And yeah, I mean, I think there should be some protected rivals, or at least, you know, in my opinion, you know, there should be, you know, the teams are coming from out west. Let's try to keep them playing. And if we're gonna, you know, if these conferences are gonna be spread out across, you know, the country essentially, let's try to keep some regionality to it. But no, I'm glad that you're on board with it too, because yeah, Iowa State fans not too happy with the Farmageddon going away.
It's silly, and at the very least, I don't. You know, Iowa State's got Iowa every year, and I understand that in the non-conference. K-State that year, and I think 28 has Colorado as a non-conference opponent already booked. And look, they're going to play Arizona for the first 2 seasons as a non-con. And that's okay. I mean, I understand that that's immediate, but you can find another game for 27 and 28. And if they absolutely won't change it, I think these 2 schools would say, well, screw you. We're going to just do it as a non-con game. This is important to us. Yeah. And the fact that our own conference office doesn't understand that this rivalry is important, and it really has grown into something kind of fun and cool. And, you know, even though the Farmageddon name kind of came up from a sports writer, a lowly little sports writer, it's one of the great names of rivalries, you know. So look, I'm upset about it. I'm just disenchanted right now with the direction the Big 12 office is sending us in.
Yeah, and I think too,
were
like
the fans upset.
Oh yeah,
go ahead, Grant.
Oh yeah. But there's always those fans who are like, well, we dominate them, so is it really a rivalry? Well, come on, man. You get fired up for this game. People are going to be fired up for Saturday, although it's not sold out because it's Thanksgiving. It's the only game so far this season that hasn't been sold out on K-State's entire schedule, but they'll get it there. It's an important game. You can't deny it's important. The problem is if they assign 3 regular opponents, they might have to give Colorado to K-State because, I mean, who's Colorado got that isn't just a Western team? And then you got Oklahoma State, KU, and Iowa State. So I still don't know who would miss the cut.
Yeah, no, and you know, I've seen on, you know, for years I've seen on the Iowa State side of things, you know, we got to come up with some kind of trophy for this game, and you know, I've seen it tossed around a combine that just, you know, that traveling combine color, you know, half purple, half cardinal gold.
I saw one that I'm not a farm guy. I went to an ag school, but the front end changes for corn and wheat. I don't know, and you actually change it out for who has it.
Yeah,
because
I wouldn't know that either.
Because wheat is superior to corn.
It's called the head of the combine.
But thank you. I knew that. I was just going to see if you did.
Yeah, it was just a test.
So looking at some of Kansas State's recent games, you know, they came back from down 11 last week versus Kansas to get the win. You know, a few games before that, they're down 20 in the second half, I think, with about 4 minutes left in the third quarter to come back and tie it up versus Texas, which they should have won that game.
Yep.
You know, what is it about this team that, you know, you love to see it in teams that they don't give up, they consistently fight, they claw and battle back? What is it about this Kansas State team that, you know, they're cool and calm under pressure and just always seem to have a chance to win the game?
Yeah, the only game that didn't feel really competitive this year was the Oklahoma State game. And Kansas State was just unexplainably flat as an entire team, and to a level I'd never really seen at K-State since Ron Prince. Oh man. And it was
some of those teams.
I was dumbfounded by what I saw. But they lose at Missouri on a 61-yard miracle field goal. They lose at Texas in a game they probably, as you said, should have won. And It's just those breaks haven't come like they did on Saturday. And honestly, they got a few breaks that went their way, and they are determined. They do come back. They do stay in games. But I think the hallmark of this conference schedule for K-State is they've played 4 pretty darn good teams on the road, and they've had 4 of the weaker teams in conference at home, and they have annihilated every one of those teams. And Iowa State is kind of in the middle of all that. We'll see how Saturday's game comes out.
Yeah.
So is there anything with, the quarterback situation kind of flip-flop this year? Is there any real controversy, or should Iowa State expect to see 2 quarterbacks?
No, you'll see Will Howard. Unless K-State gets away. Yeah, Will Howard has played almost exclusively the last 3 weeks. We saw a hair of Avery Johnson at Texas, and that didn't work. Texas is just too fast and physical. It's hard to get anything to work against Texas.
Right.
The only thing that works against Texas is when they get bored and they forget they're in the middle of a game. That's literally. The team is so talented, but they just kind of like, hey, butterfly. It's like they're just completely ADD.
Well, that's Iowa State experienced that last week. Iowa State rushed for 9 yards total against Texas, and it doesn't help their offensive linemen. Gave them some bulletin board material that they absolutely they were hammering on.
Yeah, don't make the beast mad, because that front line is very good. But yeah, we'll see Will Howard. He's now the career touchdown pass leader in K-State football history, passing Josh Freeman, speaking of the Ron Prince era. And he's closing in on the single season record held by El Roberson. So he's moving in on some pretty big marks. But Saturday was a good reason, a description of why he stays in there, because the kid's a warrior. He's kind of, his nickname's Iron Will, because even when he's not playing bad, he finds a way to get some plays done, and he did on Saturday against Kansas.
Well, I kind of wanted to ask you too about, I'm glad that Aiden brought that up about Avery Johnson, because he had some huge games. He had 5 touchdowns versus Tech, and then versus TCU, rushed 16 times for 73 yards, but hasn't really played much the last couple of games. Is that more of a product of Will Howard just being a stud and just taking over, or is it that people kind of figured out when he's in there, he's mostly just in there to run, and unless it's a blowout?
Yeah. Well, a couple things there. Yeah, it's because Will Howard's playing well. Will Howard got a fire lit under him when Avery scored 5 touchdowns at Texas Tech. Great quarterback run defense, Tech. That was fantastic. He's just, the thing about Avery is the fans can't figure out why they call the plays the way they do for him, because this kid can throw the ball. Granted, he's not as advanced in reading defenses and probably not as crisp going through progressions as Will Howard, but he's made some incredible throws already this season. And they get really frustrated because they just put him in there and put him in a kind of a losing situation where you're going to run the read, the option read, but they're stuff in the line of scrimmage. It doesn't matter what you choose. They're both covered. So it's kind of been that way. They need to do something better with him, but right now they're just kind of cruising through it. The shame is they stuck him in against Houston in a blowout, and that was his 5th game. Now, most of us around here don't feel like Avery's going to be gone before then. He's not going to make it to a 5th season for a 4th year of eligibility. That's how good he is. He's undeniably good and special, and an incredible kid. A 4.0 type student, got all the things you want from a quarterback. Plus, he's the fastest guy on the team, and he's got a really good arm. And we just discussed this on one of my shows, The Insiders, that aired earlier today.
Go check it out.
Does Will Howard, he's got the COVID year. If he stays around, I don't think he's the starter next year. You have to move on. You don't want to have the chance of losing Avery Johnson into the transfer portal. And that's a whole new world here. You had just said, okay, kid, we're going to redshirt you and you can't go anywhere. You're stuck here at Kansas State. And that's all changed now with the portal. So it's a very intriguing situation to see it happen if it happens. But I don't think Will's quite ready for the NFL. And I think he can play. I see some similarities there with Brock Purdy, to be honest. I think in the right situation, he could certainly play. In fact, I think he's better designed for the NFL than the college game. But I also think he could benefit from another year. And if that's in another system, that might even help him more. So that'll be just a fun storyline to keep an eye on.
Yeah. I feel like Iowa State's almost kind of in a similar situation. We've got Iowa State's got 4-star quarterback, true freshman now, J.J. Cole, who's sitting behind redshirt freshman Rocco Beck. And Rocco's just having an all freshman,
He's been great.
season. So, Aiden, do you have anything else before we kind of dive into the special teams side of things?
It's time to
You
get to the meat and
really?
potatoes.
You had to go there, didn't you, Kicker?
Yep. So we are kicking it. So we are, obviously a special teams kind of centered podcast here. Now, Kansas State's been, their special teams. They're known for, their great special teams. Now, looking at Kansas State's kicker, he is 9 of 12 on the year, so 12 attempts is the lowest number of attempts in the Big 12 this year.
Mm-hmm.
Is that more so due to the fact he hasn't really had to kick field goals, or he has a big leg? I mean, I see he's got a couple of 51-yarders in his career. First off, too, he's built like a DN. He's like 6'5".
It's crazy how big he is.
And
and he's not just tall and big. He's big. He's thick.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more about about Kansas State's kicker.
Chris Tennant. Yeah, he's got a huge leg, but he gets the yips. And we saw it last year at TCU. We were watching him kick in pregame, and he was kicking from 60 yards field goals, but just absolutely driving the ball. He gets in the game and he starts steering the ball, and he missed a huge field goal in that game. In fact, K-State might have won in Fort Worth last year if he made it. And that kind of started his yips. He ran into the yips earlier this year. I think it was Missouri. But the number of field goals they attempted really is a function of this team is really good in the red zone. They get into the end zone. They don't settle for many field goals. But then you wonder, well, hold on, is there a calculation here where they think going for it on fourth down instead of maybe risking a missed field goal and getting nothing and losing so much momentum from missing a field goal, are we better off just going for it and maybe leaving them the ball at the 5-yard line to take over? And I think that's been a calculation that might have come in. But yeah, place kicking has been indecisive. We'll leave it that way. If they need to win a game from 50 yards, boy, he's got the leg to bury it. But will he get the yips at the wrong time? That's the question.
Is he also Kansas State's kickoff guy as well?
Yeah, and he does typically put it through the end zone, except for that occasional, oops, I missed it, and kicked it out of bounds at the 20. I mean, again, I don't know if there's a flaw in his technique where he, kind of like a golfer lifts up too soon or something, but he does miss hit some balls.
Yep. And we've seen that a couple of times too with with Iowa State's kicker. We've kind of drilled down, I think, what the cause of that one might be. Now looking at Kansas State's punter, Jack Bloomer, is that his last name? Okay, so he's got a long of 69, nice on the year, with an average of 42 yards per punt. What's kind of the punting unit been like? Is he more of a just a straight line punter? Is he kind of a rugby style punter?
No, he's straight line. Can really rip the ball, but they've had some issues with going the wrong way. He didn't hit it very well last weekend at Kansas. Didn't turn out to be that big a deal. There was one return. I can't remember. It was a kicker punt that was significant for KU. But yeah, he's been pretty solid. Ty Zentner was a throwback. He took over when Tennant got the yips last year. He was doing the kickoffs and punting, Zentner, and they gave him the field goals. He was doing it all. And he was just a warrior. He's got that incredible focus. And I don't know if you saw the clip of him going on the Big 12 championship to kick the winning field goal, but he was laughing. He's just like, someone said something funny on the sidelines. He's just laughing and goes on and just kicks it right through. He's one of those kids, I pulled the fire alarm. What are you going to do about it? That type of kid. And it's great to have as a kicker, to be honest. I mean, you damn the consequences. I'm just going to go strike this ball. They've spread it around this year, and Bloomer's been good, but not great. The real problem for K-State has been a return game.
Okay, and I'm glad you brought that up. That is very much the non-Kansas State side of things we're seeing this year. Kansas State, their kickoff return, they're averaging about 19 yards a return, which I feel like isn't no touchdowns, which usually I feel like you see a couple touchdowns.
Yep.
Kickoff return, and then punts, only averaging about 5.5 yards a return. So what's going on with the return units this year with Kansas State?
I just don't. They brought in a new special teams coordinator, analyst or whatever you want to call it. I don't feel like they've had the great schemes. I don't feel like they blocked as well. But there's a couple reasons maybe behind that. Number one, kickoff rules now. I hate them. I absolutely hate them. And it's just taken so much out of it. But I had never seen K-State fair catch a kickoff, out on the playing field until this year. And I think that was
Interesting.
a sign of how bad things are. But they've also had enough injuries where they've had to play enough young guys that were maybe on special teams early in the season, and now they're in the regular rotation. And they take them off, and you got someone new out there. Almost every week, it seems like someone new has been thrown into special teams, which is less than ideal. But I think it was 2006, the last time K-State went through a season without at least one punt or kick return for a touchdown, and they're flirting with it. And they had one kickoff return this year that even came close to being broke. That's it. It's been a non-factor. And it's painful to watch, to be honest. It's been the secret sauce for K-State. You look at all three of those games that K-State lost, a significant return in every game flips the outcome. And that has been exactly what K-State has done in the past. And they're getting by without it. Special teams kind of came to their rescue Saturday at Kansas, which was, pretty fulfilling for K-State fans since Sean Snyder is over there at Kansas now. But it's been something I've harked on from the very start of the season. This isn't K-State. They got to be better in special teams. It's a point of pride. Get your pride back.
Yeah, and I feel like Kansas State and Iowa State, they have to win in similar ways. They're very similar programs in that I don't know if Kansas State's ever gotten a 5-star recruit, but Iowa State just typically doesn't get those. They get 3-star recruits, occasionally a 4-star recruit, and winning in the margins and winning the turnover battle, the special teams. That's where Iowa State's gonna win games. I think Kansas State's been very, very good at special teams for a very long time, which is what's won them a lot of games. Now we've talked a little bit about the offense. Tell us about the defense as well too. What can Iowa State fans expect from Kansas State's defense?
This has been a surprisingly good K-State defense. Now, Kansas threw everything at K-State. I mean, they're down to their third quarterback, and they were running, wildcat with the option and just doing all kinds of stuff that really stressed the defense. They were on their 4-string middle linebacker by the end of that game. Daniel Green, the 6-year senior, came back for an injury-free season. Well, he got injured at Missouri and ripped a pec, and he's been gone. And then Jake Clifton, a sophomore, a true sophomore that played last year, kind of moved into that spot once he got healthy and was playing really well. He blew a knee 2 weeks ago. So they've been playing Austin Romaine, a true freshman, at that spot. He's got a broken hand, so he's been playing through that. He didn't finish Saturday's game, and they had a junior walk-on at middle linebacker. Bo Palmer actually did a good job. But I think that defines why K-State had a little bit of problems sometimes with that KU running game. Because, well, first of all, Devin Neal's an NFL guy, and they just couldn't get him to the ground. But the key to this defense hasn't been stopping opponents out on the field. They do a pretty good job on third down. But when you get in the red zone, good luck getting in the end zone. It's been the darndest thing I've ever seen. They just don't give up touchdowns. Now, if you look at the red zone stats, they give up points, but a lot of them are field goals.
Mm-hmm.
And because the way K-State plays, a lot of teams go for it on fourth down and don't get it, so they get no points. And it's been really impressive. But the funny thing is, and I don't know what the actual numbers are now, but Kansas State was like at 11% red zone possessions being touchdowns. And that was earlier in the season, a couple games ago. That was second in the country. The only team above Kansas State was Michigan, and nobody can figure out why they were so good at that. I mean, it's just like, oh, Michigan. Oh, okay, I understand. They knew what the play was. That helps.
Yeah.
But K-State in the red zone has been really good. And take Missouri, for example. They got their points beyond the red zone. I mean, Luther Burden would catch the ball and run around like that bigger kid in youth football and run through the defense, and everybody would fall down. That was K-State against Missouri in that game.
Okay, and I guess last thing I've got for you, last question I've got for you on the offensive side of things, and we know about Will Howard. We've talked about Avery Johnson a little bit. Obviously, Deuce Vaughn is gone.
Yeah.
And a semi-familiar name for Iowa State fans is now a receiver at Kansas State, and Keegan Johnson.
Yep.
I don't know, how he's done this year. To be honest, I haven't really seen too many Kansas State games this year. But what can you tell us about the playmakers on the offensive side of the ball for Kansas State?
Well, I'll start with Keegan since you brought him up. He was injured, this and that. Nothing severe, just annoying injuries. And he's one of those guys, I'm going to be blunt here, that I think has problems playing through being hurt. Not injured, hurt. But he got healthy, and he was ready to go at Texas, and that was his big game. I mean, without him in that Texas game, he was an athlete that could match up better with that Texas secondary. He had a huge game, and he's been productive ever since. But they also brought in started playing a true freshman named Jace Brown that came out of Florida. And this kid, I think K-State was his only Power 5 offer. And, I mean, the first play of the Kansas game was deep down the middle to a true freshman receiver, and they connected. So he's really helped out. Running back, you always kind of wince when they say, I know he was a great player, but we're going to replace him with, a number of guys. That's exactly what K-State's done, though. DJ Giddens, who I think last year in Ames had to come on the field at the end of the game and to help him run out the clock. Mm-hmm. That's more of his MO is between the tackles. A lot of his yardage is after contact. I'd venture to say 80% of his yardage is, after tackles. It's unbelievable. He's very difficult to get to the ground. No breakaway speed. I mean, he couldn't run away from a lunch lady. So, but he's a really solid player, a really good kid. And they brought in Trayshawn Ward from Florida State, who's Deuce Vaughn light. Everyone said, "Oh, he's going to be just like he's." Don't ever tell me someone's going to be just like Deuce Vaughn or Darren Sproles. And he's been good. I mean, he had a huge run on Saturday. They really changed the momentum. But other than that, he was completely unproductive on Saturday, and it was more of a Giddens game. And that's kind of what they've done. Who's this game fit? Who's got the oomph in them this week? And sometimes it's Giddens, and sometimes it's Ward, and it has worked for them. It really has.
That's good stuff. Aiden, you got anything else you want to talk to Tim about?
Well, Ben Sinnott, the tight end, is.
Iowa
State's familiar with tight ends, and this kid, he's going. I mean, he's a junior. He's already accepted his invitation to the Senior Bowl.
Oh wow.
He and Will Howard are roommates. They're tight. It's kind of a mini Mahomes-Kelsey kind of connection. Typically, when he needs something, he finds Ben Sinnott. That happened to the first touchdown of the game on Saturday. They ran a pattern, and he patiently waited for Sinnott to work free in the back of the end zone, and it just connect all the time. But that's also a tendency on film. At Texas, they had a play. The last play of the game was a Ben Sinnott play they've run. Texas recognized it and flipped their coverage right at the snap of the ball from man to zone, and they covered it up. And Will got, it was there momentarily, and then he realized, oh crap, I got to go to my second guy, and time ran out. He just got sacked. So yeah, it was a painful way to know that they were going to their gold play, but Texas knew it was coming.
Yeah. Ben Sinnott grew up about 30 minutes away from me. So
what a hell of a kid.
He's from Waterloo.
He's
from Waterloo. Yeah.
He went to Chris Kleiman's high school.
Bingo.
So he always brings that up. Those Catholic kids. Oh, come on, Chris. But he was a walk-on. He was going to go to North Dakota State if he'd been there, and he went to Kansas State. Just walked on. Was a better hockey player. I don't want to think about him being a hockey player because he's a big son of a gun, and I don't like large people on skates. They scare me.
That's a feel-good story right there.
Yeah, it's a cool story. He really is a cool kid.
I believe he hit. We lost a baseball game 2-1 to his high school, and I believe he had the go-ahead home run.
That doesn't surprise me.
He's a freak athlete.
Yeah, he seems like it. Yep.
Nice. So we appreciate you hopping on with us, Tim, and spending some time with us here. And I think it'll be a great game on Saturday. I hope it is at least. I feel like these games are usually determined by less than one score. So
it's awesome. It's just such an awesome series. Yeah. Even last year when Kansas State is on the way to making it to the Big 12 title, they just literally had to survive. What was it, 10-9 last year? Mm-hmm. It was. I mean, we all of a sudden we were competing in the Big 10 West, and it was like, ooh, 10 points. We got a lot of points on the board. But yeah, it was just an act of survival, which you have to do sometimes in a good season. Certainly in the Big 12, you got to do it. You got to win those close games.
That's right. So we appreciate it again. Thank you so much for your time, and look forward to seeing a good game on Saturday.
Yep, absolutely, boys. Great to hear from you.
I think we got one more thing before we get out of here.
Oh.
Tim, I think you had something to tell us.
Oh yeah, you know what? I talk about this often. I'm an open book about this. I have stage 4 metastatic prostate cancer, and I was diagnosed in 2018. Was briefly in remission. Came out of it in January, and it spread through my lymphatic system. But I'm now 59. I was diagnosed originally at 53, had surgery at 54. And a lot of doctors don't even test for the PSA score, which is the prostate specific antigen score, until 55, maybe 50 at the earliest. And I'm telling everyone, man, if you're 45 or older, just tell your doc, check that PSA. It's just part of a blood test. It's part of the panel. They can just check the box and add it on there. And it'll give you a baseline score to know where you should be. Kansas State quarterback Matt Miller, who's a good friend of mine, he played at 95, was just a wonderful human being. Matty died at age 49 from advanced prostate cancer. He was finally diagnosed at age 47 after a good year of suffering, but the doctors weren't even bothering to look for prostate cancer. Guys, this is a killer, and particularly if you're young, it can take you out, because when you're young, it gets advanced very quickly. It's aggressive. So get that PSA scored. Just remember, same thing as public service announcement, but it's a PSA blood test, and it's an easy thing to do. Just you won't even know it happened because they're already taking blood.
And you're typically at your annual physical, you typically will get blood drawn anyway. So
take control of your health. That's another thing. We got to trust our doctors. We got to listen to our doctors. But particularly when you're in a cancer voyage, you're the GM of your team, and you got to take control.
Yep. Thank you for that. Appreciate you sharing that, Tim.
Guys, I enjoyed it a lot. And that's the most special teams talk I've got to do all season because I'm pissed about K-State special teams. That's the end.
Well, perfect. Well, we'll end on that. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks, Tim.
You bet.
Y'all ready for this?
And now we welcome in maybe one of the greatest shooters in the history of Iowa State basketball. Legend. Statistically, it's not a lie. Legend.
Minimum 1 to 10.
How are you?
Doing good, guys. Looking forward to Feast Week.
'Tis the season.
Let's talk some hoops, man. The Iowa State Cyclones are just beating the dog out of people right now. Now, granted, they haven't really played, any P6 teams yet. But who cares? I mean, we're just, out here just beating the shit out of people. Let's talk about it.
Yeah. So, looking at what we have over the last 4 games, not great in terms of opponents. The best Ken Palm ranking that we've played is 288 with Idaho State, 318 with Grambling, 336 with Lindenwood, and 353 with Green Bay. So
that's 353 out of 360. What?
I think it's 363 is the number.
That's not so great.
Not the best in the world. However, what I like to see, taking care of business. Freshmen look great, ready to play, relatively seamless. The one thing that the staff told me to look out for is the offense is vastly improved. We're not going to be playing these 49-39 games against Jackson State anymore. We're going to be blowing these teams out. We like to see that. Coach Schmidt, Coach Crawford, they got the offense humming. Defense is going to be business as usual. If there's anything we can take away from it, these guys have game reps. Omaha is starting to get up to the college game speed. I know we're going to talk about him today, but as a fan, you got to like what you're seeing, taking care of business. The only bad side is Hassan Ward is out for the foreseeable future, but that just means that Omaha gets to play a little bit more. So I don't know. What do you guys think so far?
What can you tell us about Hassan? Not that you brought him up.
So I don't know too much. I can make a comparison to when I played. Lindell Wigington, my freshman year, tore a ligament in his heel. First game of the season against Missouri. He was out most of the fall into December. That paved the way for Tyrese Halliburton to be the college player that he was because he got those early reps. Now, knowing that the rotation right now potentially has Omaha as the small ball 5, that opens the door to more minutes for him. So what we should be looking at is, it sucks for Ward. Hopefully he gets healthy and he's ready to go by, let's call it early before Christmas, maybe right after the Iowa game, like the 21st. But what we should be really happy about is, hey, we get to see a really fast, quick, lanky lineup with Omaha at the 5. He's built strong enough to guard some of these non-con 5s. I mean, let's just be real here. The guy from Grambling, Aku, he not the guy, nothing against him. Not the guy you want at your 5 if you're going to be playing against a Power 5 team. But that's what I would like to see. But yeah, speedy recovery to Ward.
So you'd brought up Lindell Wigginton. How long ago was it that you played?
Oh geez. So
how many years ago?
2 years out. It's 2023. It's been at least 5 or 6 years.
Okay, so you were there when Terrence Lewis was there then.
Correct. He's a year old.
Lewis, he was working on his got to be his 6th master's by now.
He's running out of classes to take.
Yeah, he's running out of classes to take. He's at Grambling State. Good to see him there. I'm sure it's probably cool for him to be back, for another, I guess, not homecoming, but where he started his career. But yeah, so you talk about Omaha. I think he did have his best game this last game versus Grambling, which is good to see. I see his minutes ramping up. Early on in the season, he was making some, I would say, freshman mistakes, some freshman fouls, not moving your feet, just kind of reaching and getting called for it. But this last game was his best game to date. That's got to be encouraging and got to be fun to see. I think the sky's the limit with him. Let's talk about Omaha though, man. Kid's a freak. I think we're just seeing the beginning.
Yeah. So really what we saw those first 2 games, everyone's going to go to the fouls. You don't need me to tell you that the foul trouble was an issue the first 2 games. Everyone, you need 2 eyes to know that. What I like seeing, especially in that Grambling game, is his teammates were the ones that were really getting him open. He wasn't in those situations where he's catching the ball back to the basket, needing a dribble and back down. That there's a rare few guys in college basketball that can truly play back to the basket. And one of them is Zach Edey, and the other one's Hunter Dickinson. Really, outside of that, there's not a lot of guys that really thrive in that role. He is going to be a slashing, fast player who's good. His biggest strength is his athleticism. From a basketball standpoint, offensively, the skill isn't quite there yet, but he's, 18, 19 years old? It's not going to be there for most freshmen. Not everyone is Kentucky. So what I'm really happy with is he's making reactionary cuts. He had offensive rebound dunks where he's gravitating towards the basket. The ball was finding him because he was getting himself in the right position. And that's all up here. So the fact that the IQ is there to be around the basket says a lot about him as a player, which tells me that we should be seeing a considerable uptick in his production on the court from a numerical standpoint. But what's more important is the energy and the effort that he's bringing on the defensive side, because he's really a menace on the other end of the court.
Yeah, that putback dunk he had versus Grambling was pretty special. Just pretty much flat-footed and just boing, pah,
I really liked the transition Euro step that he had finished
out
nice. Offside. That was the fact that I think it was Curtis Jones who found him on the break there. That was a great play.
But I think it's being a true freshman, having all the pressure put on him. He's the greatest recruit Iowa State's ever had. I'm sure he was pretty amped up those first couple games, and now he's kind of getting settled in, and we're starting to see him be more comfortable. I think, like you said, it's only going to be an uptake from here. Let's transition to another freshman though, Milan Momcilovic. Dude comes out first game of the season. I don't know how many points he had. I just remember every shot he had was going in. The fadeaway Dirk, everything he was shooting was going in. Let's talk about Milan, man.
I am got to give shout out to my Wisconsin guys, especially the ones that wear 22. Tends to be a good fit there. It's kind of weird that's how that ended up being. We get Halliburton at 22 and we get this Milan guy wearing 22 too. I'm like, that's kind of nice. But no, all around, man, he's the real deal. In my opinion, the fact that he really can guard 2 through 5 because I don't know what he's listed on the roster. He's a legit 6'9", 6'10", and he's not filled out yet. So we got to think too. If we're lucky to keep him around for maybe 2-3 years, sky's the limit with him. On top of the fact, I really compare him to almost a more skilled version of Brady Manick. To those who remember him from the Oklahoma days, national runner-up with North Carolina, he's got unlimited range. He can put the ball on the floor a little bit, get to his spot, which seems to be that left baseline fadeaway, which is a beautiful shot for all of us who've watched this point. I really like where he's at. I think the next step for him is getting to the basket a little bit more, especially since we've been playing, net ranking or KenPom ranking 288 plus. I think if the next step in his game is, hey, let's utilize our shot to get to the basket, because let's see if we can get, maybe this guy bites at one of those pump fakes, because he does have a little bit of an awkward release, but that should work in his favor because people aren't going to be used to that.
So Machine Gun Mahoney, I would, kind of my go-to on the baseline was his fadeaway, what he's got, faking the fadeaway and then stepping through and giving yourself a layup. So I'm sure he's got that in his repertoire. But if I was his, his Kevin McHale type coach, I would tell him, get that fake and then step through with it.
I think we need to get you two in a room and you can teach him a thing or two about that Machine Gun Mahoney.
I don't think Milan wants a piece of this, man. He doesn't want a 6 foot, 175 pound dude digging his ass up.
I think we should go to practice when they're done with finals, and we can do a 1-on-1 you versus Milan in the post.
I'm down, man. I got my I've got my Hirachis already in my bag. I got them ready to go. So let's talk about maybe your guys' favorite guy. He kind of started off slow as well too. Coming off the bench, had a nice game the last couple games. Talking about none other than Jiggy. Let's
boy.
He was kind of your dark horse guy. It's kind of the I can't remember what you said the first time you had John. He was your dark horse guy to not lead the team in scoring, but he was your guy. What are your thoughts on Jiggy? A few games into the season.
Well, what Coach Otts told me personally, he's going to be a gun for hire. And I think that's what we've seen, especially this last game against Grambling. He comes off the bench firing. I think he hit 2 or 3 threes in the first half, looked really good. I think they called 1 of 2, which I thought was a little bit of some BS. But overall, he's been distributing quite well. I think if you can get a nice lineup of him and Keyshawn Gilbert on the court at the same time, that gives you a lot of quick guard threats. Because really where this team excels right now, and Curtis Jones is incredibly jiggy, is incredibly underrated at this, is getting to the basket. His shot is such a threat from the outside that it allows these guys to blow by him when they contest. Either gives him a wide open 3 or he gets to go to the basket a lot easier. And Keyshawn Gilbert distributing the ball. I didn't talk as much about him the first time I was on this podcast, but man, he looks fantastic. He is, in my opinion, he's the best player on this team. I think right now, as a fan, I think this team is a Sweet 16 as a floor right now, and I truly believe that. Right now, we're Ken Pom ranked 14. The best team we're going to play over the weekend is Texas A&M, and they're Ken Pom 18. We're not even ranked right now, so it's only going to get better. Part of the ranking, yes, Ken Pom does take into it. It makes us look a little bit better because we've played garbage, but the fact that we're scoring. Our lowest scoring performance is 85 points. We have 7 or 8 guys that can play legit college minutes. And Curtis Jones off the bench is spearheading that movement. We're in a great spot right now from a program standpoint.
When we had Chris Fleek on last week, the week before, we were kind of trying to pick his brain and what he thought about Iowa State basketball. And I told him, I called our shot. I said, hey, I think Iowa State's going to win the tournament this upcoming weekend. Because they open with VCU.
Yep.
Who lost their opening game, but then have gone, they've won 3 straight. Then either Boise State or Virginia Tech. I'm not too worried about it, but I told him, I said, I think Iowa State's going to win this tournament this weekend, and then Elite Eight is the floor. I called it Elite Eight is the floor for this team. Because, Iowa State went to the Sweet 16 and nobody could, make a shot. One guy who is making shots, though, making them from the outside this year, who wasn't last year, Taman Lipsey. That guy is out here making threes, driving to the hoop, dishing, almost had a double-double by halftime the other night. I am just super impressed with how improved Taman has been, and I think he is really, they said in one of the broadcasts multiple times, he is the head of the snake. He is what makes this team go, and I love that we have, off guards that he doesn't have to always bring the ball up. It can be Gilbert or Jiggy or Taman. Maybe even a little bit of Pav if we're up, enough. But I'm loving seeing the improvement that Taman's made this year in the offseason.
I think what we should like as fans, he's hunting threes. That 3 is going to open up. When teams come into the Big 12 conference play and they're going to be looking at scouting report, the coaches are going to be watching film from these games. What did Taman Lipsey do over these last 4 games, over this Thanksgiving tournament? against DePaul, Iowa, whatever. He's looking for that 3-point shot. They're going to start contesting that 3. Guess what that means? Shot fake, drive by, get that defense in rotation. You're playing 4-on-5 basketball with a guy who's blown by you. Get some quick reaction time. We have Curtis Jones. We have Keyshawn Gilbert. We have Milan Momcilovic and Trey King, who can all make threes from the outside.
Yeah.
That's a great one to have.
He's shooting through with confidence too. I mean, he's not, last year, he hesitated and wasn't wanting to shoot 3. But this year, he's, you said he's hunting his threes. He's wanting to shoot those threes. I am a little surprised. I'll talk about Pav a little bit. I'm surprised that he's not playing more. He's looked. First off, I think he's a little smaller than I thought he was going to be. I didn't realize he was that small. But when he's out there, he's aggressive as well too. But he looks like he might be kind of getting into the groove of the Big 12 play and is maybe kind of a step behind. It might take him a couple of games to get in, but I think this lineup is really deep, and I love seeing that. I mean, he was what the I don't know what leagues
big South or something like that.
Yeah, he was their player of the year last year, and he's I think last year if we didn't get, I think he would have been a predominant player on this team last year, which just tells you how far this roster has come, and just how deep this team is.
Yeah, I think with Pav especially, you gotta think he's 19, 20 years old. He's jumping. That's a big jump. Wofford to any Big 12 school is a big jump. I mean, if you want to look at a comparison, I know there's not a lot of Big 10 fans watching this, and I'm not one either. But look at Max Klesmit from Wisconsin. He was also a Wofford transfer. He struggled his first year in Madison. He kind of got thrown into the fire a little bit more than Pav will this year because Wisconsin's rosters are relatively poor compared to this team. I'd say very poor because I hate Wisconsin. Put that on this very much. Aiden. I hate Wisconsin. But I think that's what we should be looking at. And there's only 5 guys on the court. This is a really guard-heavy team. If Pav was a 5-man, he'd be playing a lot. He's a 1 or a 2 right now because that's who he can guard. It puts him at a disadvantage. However, Curtis Jones, was he a senior? I can't imagine that Keyshawn Gilbert, if he plays the way he's been playing right now, is going to be in Ames for very long. Yeah. There's going to be a window. Yeah, it might stink for right now, but Nick Babb wasn't the starter right away, and he ended up being a huge piece on a Big 12 title winning team. So
it was Tyrese Halliburton.
Exactly, and he's probably first team All NBA point guard this year on the best offense in the NBA.
Yeah, so he's doing all right for himself, I think.
Yeah, was it like 38 assists and 0 turnovers in 2 games? Wish that was me.
So you're telling me Jackson Pavlovsky is the next Tyrese Halliburton? Is that what you're saying?
Book it.
Yeah.
Sharpie.
He's going to get traded from the Kings in 3 years.
Yeah, probably. God, how stupid are they?
Yeah.
Jeez.
That was kind of the funny part. Like, when one of the Murray twins got drafted there, Iowa fans were like, oh, man, he has to go to Sacramento. Well, if he's any good, they'll trade him in 2 years, so it doesn't really matter.
Do you see I don't want to talk Hawkeyes on that, but they're looking to get Levine, OG Anunoby, and who's the other Toronto? Pascal Siakam. Who's the trade piece there? It's Keegan Murray. He's gone. It's already happening.
NBA insider Nate Schuster has some info here.
That's just Twitter crap.
Sweet. Well, I think that that might be all we've got this week for basketball, unless you guys can think of anything else that we should chat about. That was good stuff. We want to get you on more, Nate, too, as the season rolls on and as football is winding down. We'll just kick it with some basketball stuff. Yeah,
I think the one piece we should be looking at is Grant. I'm with you. I think Iowa State's floor this tournament is a title game appearance. They really don't play that great of competition. I know FIU made a Final Four last year. Their KenPom ranking right now is 49. There's 36 at-large bids to the NCAA tournament. They're outside the bubble right now, according to KenPom. The only other team that's better than FIU in terms of KenPom ranking is A&M, and they're on the complete other side of the bracket. I think that's going to be the final matchup. I think that game is on Sunday. Or is that Saturday?
Yep.
Yeah,
Sunday.
I think we're going to have a nice little championship Sunday. Iowa State Cyclones, hopefully after some NFL slates so we can get everything together. I'm a Packers fan. They play on Thursday. They'll probably get their asses kicked, but it's all good. So I think that's what we're looking forward to this week is some feast week.
Sweet.
Hell yeah, brother.
Well, we appreciate it, Nate. Thanks for jumping on. And
Thanks for
yeah,
having us.
we'll have you on some more here, obviously, as the season rolls on. Thanks again to Tim Fitzgerald for joining us of 247 Sports with Kansas State. Great guy. He's a warrior too, as I mentioned, battling stage 4 prostate cancer. Give some good stuff though, man. He's a hoot.
Yeah,
he's a good dude. We've been texting on and off with him too, prior to leading up to this, and just got a good spirit about it. And when you're battling cancer, I think that's half the battle too, is having the good spirit about it. But he gave us some really good information, and like we talked about in the interview, this Kansas State team is not Kansas State teams like we've seen in the past, where special teams is winning it for them. And knock on wood, I hope I didn't just jinx us there. They haven't had any punt or kickoffs return for a touchdown this year, which again is very un-Kansas State like for them.
Yep.
But I didn't know their defense was that good. So should be a good game on Saturday. I feel like these games are usually determined by a score or less. So
yeah,
it'll be curious to see how Iowa State wraps up their season here. If we're going to finish 7-5 in the preseason or regular season, or 6-6.
So is there a big difference for the vibes in the program between a 6-6 and 7-5 before we get out of here?
I wouldn't say so. No, I mean, Campbell, he had that speech a couple years ago where he said, bullshit programs care about 6-6 or winning 6 games. And obviously, that's not that's not what he wants. He wants to win, 8, 9, 10 more games than that and compete for championships. But if you were to tell me at the beginning of the season that this team would be fighting for 6-6, 7-5, I would have taken it every time. This is a young team.
Absolutely.
I think they're playing either 15 or 25 freshmen. I think the future is bright for this program, for this team specifically, especially seeing our schedules that Iowa State's got this next couple of years. But I think I think these what's really big for Iowa State is 6-6, 7-5. Yeah, you want to do better than that. But it's more than that. It's the bowl prep. It's the young guys, getting in those practices that are getting those extra reps where, if you're not going to a bowl game, you're just going to sit at home. So I think that's what's really huge for Iowa State is it doesn't really matter what bowl they go to. Obviously, you want to win the bowl game. You want to finish, above 500. But I think that's really the big thing, for this team is getting those extra reps and getting that momentum, that confidence that, we're young, but we can do it.
Yep.
So I think it'll be huge for this team. So looking forward to it, though. Should be a good game. And hopefully all of our listeners have a nice Thanksgiving. Probably listen to this episode on either Wednesday when it comes out or Thursday. And
Tuesday coming out this week.
Coming out Tuesday this week. All right.
Yeah.
So, everyone, if you're traveling, safe travels. If you're still on the road traveling to Thanksgiving. And, hopefully everyone has a nice, happy Thanksgiving. So, as always, thank you to all of our loyal listeners. And remember, adopt, don't shop.